I won't spend too much time. I know, I forget what, I was thinking next month's, I forgot to check again. Next month's session, I forget what it is, but I'll have it up hopefully very soon. So with that said, here's George.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. As was said, my name is George Seaman. I'm the director here at Northwest Kansas Library System. And this is my fourth year actually offering this session for Apple. So it's been a fun 4 years. For some reason though, before this one, I was a little nervous. I don't know why that is. It's crazy. Last night I was thinking, man, do I really want to do this today? Now that I'm here, we'll get it going and kick it in gear. So I've been involved in strategic planning for about 15 years, maybe a little over 15 years, in various capacities with nonprofits, libraries, and governmental agencies. So I've got a varied past when it comes to strategic planning. Having said all that, I'm definitely not an expert by any means, but I dabble in it. Let's say that. So before we get started here, one thing I want to share is that I do like people to participate. So as we go through this, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. I have it up here so that I can see your questions as they pop up. And also, anytime you want to say something, jump in, unmute your speaker and jump in and say whatever it is that you need to say. One thing that I believe is that we all learn from each other more than watching it on a screen. So please do share your experiences and ask questions. And if I can't answer it, I'm sure somebody here with us today will be able to do so. For my strategic planning presentation that I've put together today, I've pulled from 3 strategic planning principles. One is strategic doing, another one is strategic thinking, and then the other one, of course, is traditional strategic planning. And so we'll see a lot of different aspects of these 3 beliefs, I guess you could say, in strategic planning coming in and mixing together. So if I can, I will try and point out some of these as we go through, but the way that I've got it, they really blend together. So let's begin. So this is kind of what we'll be talking about today. What is strategic planning and why is it important? And then we'll go through the planning process as I've kind of outlined it for myself. And then at the end, we will have questions. So before we actually get into the planning process, there's some things that I like everybody to think about when they're beginning this process. One, do I currently have a plan? That was part of the pre-session today, having you guys fill out that questionnaire. So do you currently have a plan? Yes or no? If not, then we're beginning from scratch. If yes, depending on how old it is, then we have something to build upon. Also, we need to determine who is going to be on the planning committee, or who are going to be our guiding members. So those are going to be board members, staff, community members, stakeholders, such as the city council or county commission or township commission or whatever you are dealing with your library. It's important that everybody has a job. So not only those that are on the planning committee that are creating this plan, but also staff, board members who are going to be implementing this plan. Everybody has a job. This isn't just a one-person process or thing. Also, it's important for everybody to know that they're going to have homework. So I hope your board members don't think that they're just showing up for 1 hour every month and that's all that they're doing, because there's more to being a trustee than that. And so they will be doing some things at home, whether it be writing portions of a plan or planning an activity or something of that nature. And actually showing up to the library and participating is a huge part of it. Your sessions when you're doing planning should be no longer than an hour. If you take longer than an hour during a session for planning, it's going to get bogged down. People are going to start talking about grandkids and children, and you're going to get off topic, and you're just going to be wasting everybody's time. Another thing is somebody needs to take notes. So things that are said, ideas that are brought up, so that they don't just end up in this nebulous cloud above your head that doesn't have anything to do with planning because you've completely forgotten it after it is said. Need to have somebody writing these things down so you remember. And then that person hopefully will also track assignments. So if you've given a staff member an assignment to do a piece of the planning or to do an activity to make sure that this plan is moving forward, they need to have that assignment written down, and then accountability has to be a part of that. They need to be asked, how is it going? Okay, another thing before we start is understand that the plan is a living document. This is not something that you say, okay, we did it this year, and you put it on a shelf and you walk away. This is an ongoing process that builds upon itself. It changes, it grows, it shrinks, it does everything that you need it to do in order to accomplish your vision moving forward. And then the last thing that is very important is you need to have a timeline. So you need to have a timeline for when you're going to begin this process and end it. You're going to have a timeline for when you want to have your various components, your goals completed. And so that's another important piece. So currently, do you have a plan? Who's going to be a part of this process? Understanding it's a living document, and then a timeline. Okay. So everybody have this so far. I haven't seen any questions, and I can't tell from faces on the computer screen whether you're completely done or not, or if you've fallen asleep or not. Those are 4 big things to think of beforehand. Okay, so what is strategic planning? That's a question for all of you. Type it, speak. What is strategic planning? What do you think it is? Somebody break the ice. Oh, we have somebody. Okay, here we go. A roadmap to get to where we want to go. Very good. Goals for the future of the library. Excellent. In short, it's planning for the future. Excellent. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I have some quotes here from some professionals who do this for a living, and it's interesting what they say. First one here says, strategic planning is, quote, the process by which guiding members of an organization envision its future and develop necessary procedures and operations to achieve that future. And that comes from Dysart and Jones Associates. This is their strategic planning materials. So notice in there they said the process by which guiding members of an organization envision its future and develop procedures, operations to achieve that future. Another one is strategic planning, which can be defined as a review of current and past performance and assessment of possible short-term impacts and a plan for creating the best possible future. Okay, and that comes from Rudy Denham, who is a strategic planning person, and he wrote this for Feliciter. Last one I have is true strategy is about placing bets and making hard choices. The objective is not to eliminate risk, but to increase the odds of success. I really like that one because you can never eliminate risk and you can never eliminate failure. But if you can increase your odds of success, then you are doing good. Okay, so that is what strategic planning is. So why is strategic planning important? so the library doesn't become stagnant. Thank you very much. I really like that, Samantha. Anybody else?
There were a couple before that too. It will keep everyone on track to the goal, and it measures results and keeps everyone on the same page goal-wise.
There we go. Yes. Thank you very much. Excellent. Excellent. I agree 100%. I always like to say it's also the difference between react and respond. And what I mean there is when you react, it's kind of a frantic shooting from the hip type of thing. When you respond, you're coming with a thought through point that is in response then or in reply to a situation. So instead of shooting from the hip, it's critically thought through. And that's important, especially with technology and other things that we are dealing with in the library, because if you react and you buy everything that comes along and 1 out of the 5 things actually pans out, you're wasting a lot of money and effort and so on and so forth. We also have, without it, the library will never aspire to attain goals other than day-to-day tasks. It helps reactions too. You have a guiding principle to use to help shape reactions. Very good. Okay. And then I also have, it's using our limited resources efficiently and effectively. I know all of us don't have the budgets of our dreams, and so we have to use what we get in a manner that will allow it to stretch the farthest and do the most good. And so strategic planning allows us to do that. Okay, any other comments? Very good comments. I appreciate everybody participating here. Okay. So the planning process, the first 2 here, as we go through, will only be something that you will need to do for the first time, or if you haven't developed a vision or mission statement or things like that. So if you're beginning from scratch, you'll have to do all of this, and then whenever you go to redo your plan, you won't have to go back to that beginning stages. You'll just have to revisit it briefly. So we're going to begin by looking at statements, mission and vision statements, guiding principles, things of that nature. Then we're going to go on to where are we now? So what are we doing now? What is successful about what we're doing now? So on and so forth. Then we'll discuss the inputs, the actual developing or shaping the plan, the outputs, and then my favorite part, and I hope it's everybody else's favorite part, the celebrating part. So once you actually achieve a goal, you need to celebrate that. It gives you more of a desire to continue moving forward with your plan. So not only do you have the feeling of actually achieving it, seeing how important it is to your community and achieving it, but then there's also the point of actually celebrating it as something that you've been able to accomplish as a team if you've got your board working with you and your staff, if you have a staff. So that is the process as I've developed it and see it. You've probably seen these stated in other ways, different ways, but this is kind of the way that I've developed it. And so you can take this and tweak it however you need to for your own purposes. And as we go through, you'll see more detail on each of these. So let's start with the mission statement. So why do we write a mission statement? Anybody have a really good mission statement that they use day to day in their library? Okay, seeing none, then I will guess maybe we're not using our mission statement in that way. So let's talk about that. First off, a mission statement tells the community why we are doing what we are doing or why we exist. So the reason that, oh, there we go. Victoria says, so that everyone will know the goal they're aiming for. Absolutely. That is, yes, the why we are here. And then there's the vision statement, which is actually saying this is where we are going. This is what we're shooting for 3, 5, 10 years from now. Okay. The mission statement is why. And so both of these statements should be used when you're making some kind of a decision outside of your strategic planning. This should be your first filter. So if a new book jobber comes to your library and he says, look, I got these nice encyclopedias and they're only for $200. You can put them on your shelves, okay? If your mission statement says that you're here to provide information, then buying a set of encyclopedias would fit into that mission. Kind of see what I'm saying there? Now, if somebody else comes in and says, look, I've got this beer making kit, and you're about providing information, but maybe not about teaching or something in your mission statement, then maybe you wouldn't purchase the beer making kit. These are crazy ideas, of course. Yes, I like coming up with crazy ideas. But it's to show that everything that happens outside of your plan needs to be run through some kind of a filter. And again, that goes back to the react response, helping your reactions, allowing yourself to respond instead of react with emotion, things of that nature. So that's a good use for your mission statement and vision statement. Is this going to help me get to that future? I hope that your community's values can be a part of these statements and reflected in these statements. That's not always possible if your community's kind of just shooting from the hip, and you definitely don't want to just throw their values in your statement. But if you have a community that has certain values or a certain mission themselves that they're working from, then including some of those values and those beliefs or those whys into your mission statement would help kind of make you a part of the greater community. These statements do not need to be perfect in any way, shape, or form. And please don't get caught up in wordsmithing these statements. Statements should be no more than 1 or 2 sentences. They need to capture your end goal or capture the why. I have a friend that used to always say, brevity is the soul of wit, Shakespeare quote. And I believe that. As brief and concise, clear, inspirational, memorable, leave buzzwords or jargon out of it, make them understandable, dream big, and think outside the library. Something that I've heard said, and I think it was, oh boy, drawing a blank here. Anyway, it's unimportant, is avoid books, educational reading, statements like that, recreational reading. I mean, currently there's a thread of belief within libraries is that we need to start shaping ourselves around education because that is something that people understand. And so are your folks that are doing story time, are they just story time experts or are they teachers? Do you teach in the library using that kind of verbiage instead of the jargon that we use in libraries? So these are just a few things to think about. Some activities to help you develop a mission statement that I always like are, what do you ask those that are working on this mission statement with you, what do you want to see in the library 3, 5, 10 years? What do you want the library to look like? What would you like the newspaper to say about your library in 3, 5, 10 years? And then for the mission statement, what does the library do? Why does the library do it? Why do you exist as an organization? So one thing, I have a video and it's about 17 minutes. I want to share it with you because I think it captures exactly why. And it's Simon Sinek, and he did a video on why some organizations succeed and why others don't. Some of you have probably seen this. It's been out for a while. But I really like the way that he puts across the why. And so I'd like to show this to you, and I hope everything works. So let me give this a try here. I'm going to Share, screen share. Okay. All right, can everybody see this?
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet, they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain, looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, you know, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the dot-com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers' team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich, and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, "That's an amazing discovery, guys. Now we'll improve upon your technology." But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10%, proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap, that you have to close, as Geoffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo's a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you, we don't need it, we don't like it, you're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad. But he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there are 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world. It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans. They're not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
Okay. So what do you think of that? There's a lot there. I think there's a lot of depth to that we can use in various aspects of libraries, one being a leader. But the big thing I wanted to bring out today was the why. And libraries have a lot of why we do what we do. We want to make sure that people are literate. We want to make sure that people are learning and growing. We want to make sure that society is a better place because of the library. And so we have a lot of why that can connect with a lot of different people. And so we need to bring that why out in our mission statements, vision statements, and our planning, and in our everyday actions. When people ask me about libraries, I tell them why I'm a part of libraries and why I believe in libraries. And I've noticed over the years since I've seen this, that message resonates a lot better with people than any other message that you can share. So, all right. So hopefully that was inspiring for everybody, and everybody didn't just fall asleep on me. So let's talk about the next stage in our planning, the current services and statistics. So where are we now? This is a pretty simple process. It's actually just making a list of the current services that you provide. So what is it that you do? Well, story time, checking books in and out, lending DVDs if that's the case, providing space for teens to come after school and study, providing space for families to interact, whatever it may be. And then gather your statistics that go along with those services that you do provide. And then on top of that is gathering then all the anecdotal information that can go along with your services. So if you had a mom come up after story time and they say, you know, Ellie is really getting this reading thing, you know, because of story time and the 6x6 ready to read program that you shared with us, Ellie's going to be ready to read before she even gets into kindergarten. Right there is an anecdotal statement, story that you need to make sure that you write down and keep a hold of, because then that tells you the value of that story time, and that is something you need to continue to spend your resources on. Okay. Once you've gathered all that, then you can just go through and evaluate your current services, and that can be just as simple as doing a cost per patron comparison. So, you know, you purchase nonfiction books, but they're not getting checked out. You know, how many per patron are you spending then on nonfiction per year compared to then the fiction? And see these different areas of your library with a new light. That'll tell you whether maybe you need to cut back on purchasing nonfiction or buy more fiction. Or maybe you have a bunch of people that like to read the military and nonfiction, and so you want to buy more military for those people that read that. This will give you a different perspective on looking at your library. Look at community value. You know, one thing that here in Norton that we've always needed is an after-school program. And so the library here started a Lego club, an art club, and they have different activities almost every night of the week for children to come after school and participate in. It was a huge need, and they're providing a huge community value by doing that. And so now the children, instead of running around doing who knows what in town, they're building a creation in out of Legos. That's building their self-esteem, that's building their creativity, that's building their brain. And it's keeping them off the streets, keeping them occupied, helping their parents who might be struggling, who both are working 2 jobs to make ends meet. It's providing a community value. And so that is a program, no matter if you have 3 or 10 kids, they see that as a community value and something that they need to keep doing, even if the cost per patron is high or whatever. So that's another aspect of this. Some activities that you can do when you're gathering this information and you're trying to determine what's good and bad about your library. Some things that I like to do is have board members, just to get their perspective on this, is write that love letter or breakup letter like we talked about at the first session, or have them write a news article about the library saying what they like, or, you know, a scathing one that says what they don't like about the library or something like that. Or have them write, say, an email to their friend saying why the library is important to them, or what the library does that is important to them, just to get some idea of some things that they see that are value and some things that they believe in that the library is doing. Some other filters to run your current services through would be relevance, infrastructure. Do you continue to have the infrastructure you need to serve this aspect of your patrons, or to do this, you know, the story time or whatever? Again, coming back to that, do you meet some community needs? And then the other one is are there competitors? Are there people that can do what you're doing better? Maybe it's time then to take and build a partnership with them and use your resources then to do something else. So just some things to look at when you're going through your current services that you have. Okay, any questions so far about anything we've seen, said, heard? And I have about 3 pages of notes here that I'm pulling information off of. I will send this to, no, actually, instead of sending it, I will put it on the Moodle page. That way you have access to this as well, that has a little bit more of this information on it, so you don't have to continue to write furious notes. just write down maybe some impressions that you're getting as you're going through this. So any questions, thoughts, ideas? Okay, we'll now go to the inputs. So once you figured out where you're at, what services are going well for you, what is good about your current situation, and what is bad, so that you can eliminate things. Then you go into the data collection and inputs. Now, this doesn't have to be a long, arduous process. I know a lot of people that are one person in the library, they're thinking, oh, crap, this is a lot to ask of one person. It definitely is, and that's why you have to make sure your board is on board helping you with this whole process. And this doesn't have to be a difficult process to go through. First thing is demographic information. And that's as simple as going out to the census website and seeing what your community looks like. A lot of people say, well, I already know what my community looks like. I had an experience recently when I was at Research Institute for Public Libraries in Colorado. I met a lady from Tennessee, and she was told the same thing. Look at her demographic information. She's from a community of maybe like 500. She said, I went out and looked at it, and lo and behold, there are more young families in my community than older folks. She said, I didn't realize that. She said, I never see these young families. Well, come to find out that these young families were, of course, leaving, going to work in another community, and then coming home in the evenings. She saw that. She said, okay, what can we do to serve these folks? Because that is part of who we are. We serve. That is our why. So what do we do to do this? And so they started changing their hours. They were open only during the day. So they changed their hours. They had some evening hours. They did weekends, advertised it, started having a story time on the weekend, started doing some different activities in the evening to draw families in. She said they went from not having very many young families coming to regularly having between 15 and 20 young families coming to their library. And so all it took was looking at that demographic information and discovering something that you didn't realize about your community and going from there. Like I said, she thought old white people was all that she had in her community, and here she come to find out there were more folks in her community than that. So take a look at the demographic information. It may surprise you. Another thing that I like to share with people is to look at the library statistics and compare what you do with other libraries. So one way that you can do that is take a look at a library that maybe has the same population and budget size as you. Another story that comes from that is at the same institute, I was talking to somebody else, and they said, I was looking at this and I noticed one community, they were doing 10,000 more circs than we were. Couldn't understand how that is. So they actually called the librarian up and they said, what do you do? Developed a great relationship with the librarian and found out what they were doing to get that many circs. And so then they started implementing some of the same things and started seeing the same increase in circs. And so that is one thing that you can do is, compare those statistics, see where other people are achieving that you aren't, or see where you're achieving so that you have a point of pride then in what you're doing and that you know that you're accomplishing something. And then contact those librarians. They're going to be more than willing to share with you what they're doing. If there's one thing that we do, it's definitely share as a profession. Then there's surveys, questionnaires, interviews, focus groups. Something as simple as like that survey that I asked you to complete before coming to this session today. It can be something that simple. It can be something as simple as having 2 jars on your circulation desk. And when somebody comes up to check out a book, have the questionnaire that says, do you know about the library lending ebooks? And then have a pile of jelly beans or little fuzzy things, and then they can put them in the jars. And then you can then determine, do people actually know whether we lend ebooks or not? And so you know what to do then to focus on getting more people to use your ebooks, how to market them. Simple things like that can go miles in helping you understand what is going on in your community and understand their needs and their desires. So some things you definitely can ask, and another thing you can do is just ask at the reference or at the circulation desk when you're checking out their books. Say, hey, did you notice this? Or, hey, would you like reading these kind of books? Or, hey, we're thinking about starting a coloring club for adults. Would you be interested? Simple as that. And you can get information that you need. Some things to do: ask open-ended question. Using scales is always good. Do you like it? Between 1 and 5 or whatever. Grouping activities are good. Having just a chalkboard or a whiteboard out and asking them what they like about the library, anything like that. It can be pretty simple. You don't have to go to extreme lengths to get the information that you need. Another aspect of that is go outside of the people that come to the library, because you'll never know why Bob isn't coming to the library until you ask Bob. You can't ask your patrons that come in to tell you why Bob's not coming to the library. So it's good to go out and actually, people that don't come to the library, if you see them, at the local cafe when you're going to get lunch and there's Bob, go up and say, hey, Bob, I work at the library. I don't see you there. What can we do to get you to come to the library? You'll get all kinds of good information that way. And he might say he thinks the library should be torn down and, community gardens should be put in its place. Who knows? And if that's the case, then you just move on. But if you get good information, then that's going to be worth taking the moment to ask. And this is a good way to get board members involved, is asking these questions of people in the community. Okay. Then you take that information, where are we now? And then you take community needs, and community needs are as simple as things that the community needs. You live there, you're a part of that community. You know what they need. Like I knew here in Norton, we needed an after-school program. If you don't know, then ask that question of people in the community. You take all these things then, and these are going to be your inputs that will help you determine what you're going to do for the library. Okay, and all of this is, you've constantly got the why in the back of your head with the mission and vision statement. So now you're going to take this information and you're going to turn this into a plan. Okay, and any questions yet? I feel like I'm just a big talking head here. And anybody, thoughts, questions? Am I saying something that is just completely obscene and there's no way you could do it? Okay. All right. Now we'll go on to actually shaping this plan. So writing goals, objectives, and activities. Well, thank you, Victoria. So first off, your goal is going to be your statement that's going to say, this is what we're going to do. Your objective then is going to be how we're going to get there. And then the activities are the nitty-gritty of actually doing it. Okay. Now this is where you get assigning people tasks. So say there's an objective under a goal, and you know that one of your board members is really good at organizing parties or something like that, and this is a goal for throwing a party or whatever. Then that is where you go and you come to the board member and you say, I would like you to take on this goal and this objective. And then they can figure out the activities that they need to do, if they're not already spelled out, to accomplish that objective, and find people then to help them accomplish that objective. So this is really where you can also get people involved in doing this. I recommend just writing the goals and objectives, not really getting into the nitty-gritty of the activities, letting the people that have that goal and objective come up with the activities to accomplish it is, in my mind, better, so that they're not completely micromanaged during this process. Some things in writing goals and objectives, of course, that are out there is SMART, making sure they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and making sure that there's a time frame to it. SWOT is another analysis that you can use of different inputs to determine whether it's something that you want to do or not. And that's looking at your library strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then looking at the various inputs in that same light. Then there are something that we call guiding principles. That is an important aspect of writing your goals. And that's a very good point, Terry. Thank you for saying that. And that's something that you can always put as a caveat to what you're doing, that we are limited in our resources, but we'll do what we can. If you really get some good input from them and there's something that they really want to see happen, then I would say we are limited right now. We'll go back to the planning and we'll see what we can do. And one other thing you can do too that can help is get them involved in this. If there really is something that they want to see happen in the community and they feel that tied to it, bring them in and make them a part of it, because then they're going to be the person that you can then take to the city council or whatever the governing body is, and they can advocate then for the library. They can then advocate for this thing that they want to see done. And that is going to speak volumes compared to you going or even a board member going and saying the same thing. So I would definitely turn that into getting them involved. The one thing you can also do is add that caveat that we're looking for new things to do. We have limited resources. We're going to do what we can. And that's why we are looking for this information. And so there's always that caveat that can be placed at the beginning of your discussion with them. But yeah, we're always looking for people to help. And so that is always a good opportunity then to say, hey, if you're this passionate about it, come help us. Next week, come on in, we'll sit down, we'll talk about it, we'll bring it up at board meeting, and we'll get this thing, put on the agenda for our planning. So very good, thank you, Terry. That was a great question. Okay, so back to these guiding principles. These are, how are we going to achieve our goals? These seem like things that are common sense, and they kind of are, but it's good to have this spelled out. And this is also good for the library staff, if you have one, to understand their role in this whole thing. And so the first guiding principle that I have here is respect. We embrace diversity and treat everyone with courtesy, equity, and fairness. So this is one thing. This is how we're going to achieve this goal, this objective. We're going to be fair, courteous, and equitable. We're going to have integrity. We operate openly and hold the highest ethical standards. Agility. We are devoted to a constant innovation and improvement in our services. And then the last I have is dedication. We are proudly committed to providing outstanding customer service. So all of these things should guide our goals and objectives and be a part of our goals and objectives. And then we come back to this strategic filters of is this relevant infrastructure? Once you've developed your goal, are these things relevant? Do we have the infrastructure? If we want to start having adult coloring club at night, do we have in place, what do we have to do to get this infrastructure in place for this? Do we have to have a staff member there? Can we find a volunteer? Do we need to get the books? Or are they going to bring their own coloring books? Are we going to provide pencils? Okay, so this is all part of that goals and objectives portion, is trying to determine if the infrastructure is in place, if it could be easily put in place, or if you really need to build one from the ground up. And so in which case then it would need to be something that would have to be tied to budget or other things. Does it meet a community need? Are there competitors? And so once you've come up with your goals through SMART and through your inputs, then running them through these guiding principles and strategic filters, and then prioritizing, okay, we have 6 goals now that we've come up with that we can really do from our inputs. Then it's time to prioritize, because you don't want to take on more than you can handle in your strategic plan. And this comes back then to another point that I like to make. It should be no longer than a page. If you've got a strategic plan that goes on for pages, you're wasting your time and everybody else's time. And on that page, you should have 3 goals tops, I usually say, because really once you get these goals accomplished and you've had your celebration, then this plan can start, or this process can start over. And if that's mid-year, that's mid-year. Start the process over. Start going through again, back to the beginning of getting your inputs, and start moving through that process again to get you some more goals and objectives. This doesn't have to be tied to a year or 2 years or 10 years or whatever. It's whatever you need for this process to work. Okay, so that's when you come up with priorities. So if you have six goals and you're only going to take 3 of them, then you can set these other 3 aside and say, we'll look at these our next cycle. Okay, and then of course allocating the resources, so staff, time, funds, in order to accomplish these goals. And then the biggest thing, and most people say, oh, this is the hard part, is accountability and reporting. So building into your goals the accountability. Who is going to be accountable for this goal and this objective? And then making sure that they know, okay, you're going to be bringing this back and reporting to the board every month until this goal or objective has been completed. That way the board knows where you're at on those goals and objectives. And since they are part of this process, hopefully it's one of them that is coming back and reporting. Okay. So building those things into your goals and objectives will allow you to keep this process moving on and make it successful. Okay, next is outputs. So basically what comes of what you've done here. And let me put our slides. So basically the results of meeting your goals. So increased people coming in, or you have a coloring club now and you've got so many people coming. And then taking the measurements that you build in to determine whether this was a success or not. And then of course doing ongoing evaluation to make sure it's a continued success, or whether it's something that you need to get rid of or rethink. Real quick, sorry, I know we're running over. The last part that I wanted to share with you are some pitfalls to the process. Some of the pitfalls are no clear direction, how to say no. Again, that comes back to the response, or respond or react. Failure to prioritize, no diversification. So not just doing the same thing, not just focusing on, say, children all the time, doing some different things. Don't starve your kids, which means don't take resources from what you're doing successfully now and put those into new things. You want to make sure that the things that you are doing now that you're doing successfully can continue to move forward with funds and everything else that you need. And then just avoiding revisiting this whole process. You have to go through it. It has to be at least an annual thing. And then, of course, the last part is having your celebrations. Celebrate your successes and celebrate them with your board and everybody else that's involved in this process. I kind of ran through the last part here quickly. I will get these notes up on Moodle so that you have them. And, if you have any questions, please email me, let me know what your question is. We can work through that without any problems. Again, for the assignment, it's just completing one of the 4 assignments. It's on Moodle. I look forward to seeing some of that and use that assignment to actually build into your plan next year if you can. Anybody have any questions? One other thing, I completely forgot that I wanted to share real quick too, is with the outputs, if you can get longevity statistics or studies tied with your different services you provide, that is huge. Especially if you can get involved, say like story time. You have a young child start with lap sit time with your mom, and then they go through story time, and then they get into school. If there's a way that you can follow them over that period and show the value of what you did during story times to that child and their life in elementary school, that's another huge thing that you can bring, that actually changed their life. Of course, you'd have to get permission from parents and things like that, but if you can ever do anything like that, that is another way to build into your plan and your advocacy and everything else, some of the successes that you've had. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there too. Any other questions? Any questions?
I don't see anything coming up, but of course people can still send in questions until we close up. So while they're typing or thinking, I will say thank you for doing this. It was fabulous as always. So lots of great information there. So yeah, we'll have this stuff up on the Moodle site. need help with that, George, obviously, you know. And otherwise, we will see you all January 11th for the Youth Services webinar. I did finally go look it up. You guys have happy holidays, and lots of people thanking you and giving. Have given me lots to think about.
Good, good. If you need to talk through anything, let me know. Thank you.
All right, thank you.